Sri Lanka's new prime minister. Huh? Making history. And it's not just because she's a woman in power, though that's definitely part of it.
Right.
We're diving into a news podcast script from Trendline Podcast
Okay.
that unpacks her background. It's really unusual, and it's causing a stir.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's intriguing because her leadership, it represents this potential departure from how Sri Lanka's traditional political landscape has been.
Yeah.
And for those of you listening who follow global affairs,
Yeah,
this is a story with some serious implications.
absolutely. So let's talk about Dr. Harini Amarasuriya.
Okay.
She's not your typical prime minister.
Right.
This isn't some seasoned politician. We're talking about an academic,
Right.
a university lecturer, a human rights activist.
Yeah, and what's fascinating is she's only the third woman to ever hold this position in Sri Lanka's history. Now, on the surface, that's incredible, but thinking back on the previous two female prime ministers, Sirimavo Bandaranaike and Chandrika Kumaratunga both faced their own unique set of challenges and triumphs. Their experiences, successes, and failures, they shape the context for Amarasuriya's term, and how people view her potential for impactful change.
Wow.
Yeah.
That historical context, you can't separate her story from theirs.
Yeah.
And now there's this added weight of expectation because she's breaking the mold.
Exactly. And to add to that, Sri Lanka's political scene has long been dominated by powerful families.
Yeah.
It's almost dynastic.
Yeah.
So for someone like Dr. Amarasuriya to just shatter that mold,
Yeah.
it calls everything into question. It really throws into question the established order of power.
Imagine waking up tomorrow and a university professor is the president.
Yeah.
It would turn everything upside down. People would be both excited and skeptical.
Exactly.
Right.
The Trendline Podcast script highlighted this exact tension. Can someone with her background actually succeed in the world of politics?
Yeah.
Can a fresh perspective overcome a lack of traditional political experience, especially in a country facing such significant challenges?
Okay, so let's talk about those challenges.
Yeah.
It's not like Dr. Amarasuriya is stepping into a calm sea. Sri Lanka's been through a lot these past few years.
Right.
The report mentions an economic crisis.
Yeah.
What does that look like for everyday people?
Yeah, it's not a calm sea. Not at all. We're talking about a perfect storm of economic woes.
Right.
Inflation has been absolutely brutal, running at about 30% annually, according to the report.
Wow.
Yeah, so essential goods are scarce. People are struggling, just to afford basic necessities.
That's heartbreaking.
Yeah,
Makes you realize how fragile stability can be.
it really is.
And to add to that pressure,
Yeah.
the report also mentions this IMF deal
Right.
in the works. What's the significance of that?
So the IMF deal is crucial because Sri Lanka is deeply in debt.
Okay.
They need assistance, financial assistance. They need restructuring to get back on track, but these deals often come with strings attached.
Yeah.
Austerity measures, economic reforms, and those can be unpopular.
So it's a double-edged sword. On one hand, they desperately need the help.
Right.
On the other hand, it might mean more hardship in the short term.
Exactly. And that's where the public unrest that we talked about earlier comes into play.
Yeah.
When people are struggling to put food on the table, their patience for these kinds of complex economic solutions, it wears thin.
It's understandable, but it also creates this incredibly difficult situation for, Dr. Amarasuriya.
Right.
How can she possibly hope to achieve any of her goals when there are so many immediate crises, demanding her attention?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it circles back to that debate about experience versus a fresh perspective.
Right.
Some people are saying, she's in over her head.
Yeah.
But the Trendline podcast also highlighted kind of a counter-argument to all this.
What's that? I'm really curious to understand the optimism.
Yeah, so her supporters argue that her background, right, her deep understanding of education, labor rights, social justice, it's exactly what Sri Lanka needs to address these root causes of the issues.
It's like she's been working on solutions
Right,
her entire career, even if it wasn't in the traditional political sphere.
precisely. And the report even highlights her work in Sri Lanka's education system.
Okay.
She hasn't just been lecturing about it. She's been deeply involved,
Right.
witnessing firsthand its strengths and weaknesses.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That's not theoretical knowledge. That's lived experience.
And that kind of experience can be invaluable, especially when it comes to pushing through meaningful reforms. Take education, for example.
Yeah.
It's one thing to create a policy on paper.
Right.
It's another to actually understand the nuances of implementation,
Right.
the potential roadblocks,
Right.
the impact it'll have on teachers and students.
Absolutely. it makes you wonder, could that firsthand knowledge give her an advantage?
Right.
Like if you're a teacher in Sri Lanka and you've been struggling with this, outdated curriculum, wouldn't you be more likely to trust someone who's actually been in your classroom?
Right.
Who understands that reality?
It's a compelling argument, and it speaks to this broader trend that we're seeing globally, this desire for authenticity and leadership.
Yeah.
People are often more willing to trust those who have, walked the walk,
Right.
not just talk the talk.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so she has these potential strengths.
Right.
But let's be real. Can good intentions and this deep understanding be enough to overcome these immense challenges Sri Lanka faces, especially in a political system that's, historically been resistant to change?
That's where things get really interesting, and it brings us to the concept of political capital.
Political capital. It sounds like this intangible force in politics.
It is.
Could you elaborate on what it means and how it applies here?
Yeah, it's a great way to put it. It is this intangible force. Think of it as the ability to get things done.
Okay.
To enact change, even when there's pushback.
Right.
It's about influence, leverage.
Yeah.
Now, this capital can come from a lot of different places, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your connections, your reputation, the level of public support that you have. That's a big one.
So in Dr. Amarasuriya's case, she's certainly captured the world's attention.
Yeah.
But does that translate into real power within Sri Lanka's political system?
That's what she needs to figure out. And fast.
Right.
The report suggests that one of her biggest hurdles is going to be navigating those deeply entrenched interests, those who benefit from the status quo. She'll need to play the political game, right?
Right.
Build alliances, make compromises, calculated compromises, all while trying to prove to the Sri Lankan people that she can deliver.
And she has to do all of that while the country's facing this economic crisis.
Right.
And people are looking for, these immediate solutions. It feels like she's walking a tightrope.
Yeah. It's a tough situation.
This isn't just about her leadership, is it? It's about whether Sri Lanka's ready for this kind of change.
You hit the nail on the head. Dr. Amarasuriya's appointment is a gamble.
Yeah.
It's high risk, high reward for Sri Lanka. If she succeeds, it could usher in this new era of progressive, people-centered politics.
Right.
Not just for Sri Lanka, but for the region.
But if she stumbles?
It could reinforce that old idea that experience trumps all. Yeah. Even if that experience has been part of the problem,
right.
It's a pivotal moment for her, for Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
And the world is watching.
It's fascinating to think how this will all unfold. Okay, one final thought for our listeners to ponder as we wrap up this deep dive on Sri Lanka's new prime minister. Let's say, hypothetically, Dr. Amarasuriya has a magic wand. She can solve just one problem in Sri Lanka overnight.
Okay.
What should it be, and why? What do you think would have the most impact? What would set the stage for lasting change? Let us know what you think. We'll be keeping a close eye on Sri Lanka. Until next time, keep diving deep and stay curious.